The Galactic Council had been making decisions for other species for thousands of years, and nobody really questioned it anymore. That's just how things worked out here among the stars. When you had that much power for that long, you started believing you had the right to do whatever you wanted. And what they wanted right now was a human. Cassidy Monroe was crouched in the dirt of her family's farm dome on New Terra when the ships arrived. She was 20 years old, covered in soil up to her elbows, trying to coax tomatoes to grow in alien dirt. Her little brother Tyler was supposed to be helping, but he was busy chasing their dog between the crop rows instead. Normal day. Boring day. The last normal day she'd ever have. The enforcers came through the dome's airlock without asking permission. They were called the Valerics, and they looked like walking crystals that caught the light in ways that hurt to look at. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Cassidy stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her jeans, dirt falling everywhere. Her mom came running from the equipment shed. Cassidy Monroe, one of them said, and their voice sounded like wind chimes made of broken glass. You have been selected. That was it. No explanation. No trial. Her dad started yelling, demanding to know what this was about. Her mom grabbed Cassidy's arm. Tyler stood frozen, his face going pale. The dog kept barking. The Valerics didn't care about any of it. They explained it like they were reading from a boring textbook. Every 10 years, the planet Draconesh required a tribute. A living, thinking being to be locked in the dragon's cave. This maintained the peace. This was tradition. The dragon always killed the tribute anyway, so it didn't really matter who they chose. Humans were new to the galactic community. Their turn had come. Cassidy felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You're telling me I'm being fed to a dragon because it's someone's turn? Correct, the Valeric said. They didn't even have the decency to sound sorry about it. Her father threw a punch at one of them. His hand shattered against crystal. Her mother's screams echoed through the dome as they put Cassidy in restraints that glowed with energy. Tyler tried to run at them, all 90 pounds of 12-year-old fury, and Cassidy had to yell at him to stop, to stay back, that it would be okay even though she knew it wouldn't be. The transport ship was cold and empty. They locked her in a cell that was too clean, too white, too nothing. For 3 days she traveled across space, watching stars slide past the tiny window. Other humans on New Terra were probably protesting by now. Sending messages to Earth. Demanding the Council change its mind. None of it would matter. The Council didn't negotiate with species that barely had 10 colonies. Cassidy spent those 3 days thinking. She wasn't going to just roll over and die. That wasn't how humans worked. If this dragon wanted to kill her, fine, but she was going to make it difficult. She was going to fight. And if she was going to die anyway, she might as well die trying to figure out why this stupid system existed in the first place. When they reached Draconesh, the heat hit her like a wall. The planet was volcanic, all black rock and red skies. The Valerics walked her to a massive cave entrance carved with symbols she couldn't read. Ancient looking. The kind of ancient that made you feel small. The dragon has killed every tribute for the last 300 years, one of them told her. Almost conversational. Like they were discussing the weather. You will join them. Your death serves a greater purpose. What purpose? Cassidy demanded, pulling against the restraints. They didn't answer. They just removed her bindings, shoved her forward into the darkness, and sealed the entrance behind her with a blast of energy. The sound of it closing echoed through the cave like a funeral bell. Cassidy stood there in the dim light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The cave was huge, going back farther than she could see. She could hear something breathing in there. Something big. The sound of it made her chest vibrate. She looked around for anything useful. Found a rock with a sharp edge. Gripped it tight. Her hand was shaking but she forced it steady. If this thing came at her, she'd at least take a swing. The breathing got closer. Shadows moved. Then the light was blocked completely as something massive descended. Wings, enormous and scaled, caught what little light remained. Eyes appeared in the darkness, golden and ancient, fixed directly on her. Cassidy raised her rock and planted her feet. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Come on then. Let's get this over with. The dragon didn't attack. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was when it spoke, not with a mouth, but directly into Cassidy's head. The voice rumbled through her skull like distant thunder, old and tired and sad. Put down your weapon, human. I will not harm you. Cassidy kept the rock raised. Yeah, well, forgive me if I don't trust the giant dragon that supposedly killed 300 people. A sound echoed through the cave. It took her a moment to realize the dragon was laughing. Not a cruel laugh. A bitter one. 317, to be precise. And I have not killed a single one. That made Cassidy pause. What? The dragon moved closer, and she could finally see him properly in the dim light. His scales were deep blue, almost black, shot through with veins of gold that seemed to glow faintly. His eyes were ancient, carrying the weight of centuries. He was terrifying and beautiful and looked absolutely exhausted. My name is Thornwing, he said. And I am a prisoner, just as you are. Over the next few hours, Thornwing explained everything. The cave wasn't just a cave. It was a prison built by the Galactic Council thousands of years ago when they decided dragons were too powerful to exist freely. They'd hunted his entire species down, killed most of them, and locked him here as the last survivor. A warning. A trophy. Proof of their dominance. But the prison required power to function. Specifically, it needed the life force of a dying sentient being. Every time a tribute died in this cave, their fading energy recharged the containment field for another 10 years. The council dressed it up as tradition, as appeasement, but really it was just convenient murder. Wait, Cassidy said, sitting against the cave wall as her mind raced. You're telling me they send people here to die just to keep you locked up? Yes. And you just let them die? For 300 years. Thornwing's massive head lowered. What would you have me do? Kill them quickly to end their suffering? That is what the council expects. What they want. I refuse to be their executioner. So I watch from the shadows. I provide what water I can from the underground springs. I try to make them comfortable. And I hate myself as they die anyway, from fear or hunger or simply giving up. Cassidy stood up, pacing now, her engineering brain starting to work. This is insane. There has to be a flaw in the system. Nothing's perfect. I have had 3 centuries to search for one. Yeah, but you're not human, Cassidy shot back. No offense, but we're really good at breaking things that aren't supposed to be broken. It's kind of our specialty. She started examining the cave walls. There were symbols carved everywhere, glowing faintly with energy. Some kind of circuit system, if she had to guess. Ancient technology that predated humanity's first attempts at space travel by millennia. But circuits were circuits. Energy was energy. Everything had patterns. Thornwing watched her with something that might have been hope. What are you thinking? You said the prison needs a dying life force. Death specifically. What happens if the tribute doesn't die? The dragon went very still. I do not know. No tribute has ever survived the full 10 years. Because they died of natural causes while you sat here feeling guilty, Cassidy said, running her hands over the symbols. They were warm to the touch. But what if one didn't? What if the system's waiting for a death that never comes? The council would simply send in forces to ensure it. Eventually, yeah. But we might have time to figure something out first. Over the following days, they fell into a strange partnership. Thornwing showed Cassidy the deepest parts of the cave where underground springs provided clean water. He shared dried food he'd secretly hoarded from previous tributes, unable to let their belongings simply vanish. It wasn't much, but it was something. In return, Cassidy mapped the entire energy system of the prison. She'd studied engineering at the colony's technical school, spent 2 years learning about power grids and energy flow. This was more advanced than anything humans had built, but the principles were similar. Energy in, energy out, energy stored. There were nodes throughout the cave, concentration points where the containment field was strongest. They talked while she worked. Thornwing told her about civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans even existed. About his own kind, the dragons who had once traveled freely between stars. About art and music and beauty that the galaxy had lost when the council decided power mattered more than culture. Cassidy told him about Earth. About humanity's bloody history, all the wars and conflicts. But also about how humans kept getting back up. How they bombed themselves nearly to extinction and then somehow made it to the stars anyway. How they were stubborn and reckless and refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Your species sounds exhausting, Thornwing said, but she could hear the affection in his mental voice. We really are, Cassidy agreed, grinning. But we're still here. That counts for something. On the 5th day, she found something interesting. One of the energy nodes flickered whenever she got close to it. Like it was reacting to her specifically. She called Thornwing over. This node's behaving weird. It's like it's trying to scan me. Thornwing examined it with his ancient knowledge. His eyes widened. It is monitoring your life signs. Waiting for them to cease. So the system's actively watching me die. That's creepy. Cassidy stared at the symbol. But also useful. If it's watching, it's vulnerable. Anything that inputs data can be fed bad data. What are you proposing? I'm proposing we cheat. Cassidy's smile was pure human mischief. This thing wants a death? Maybe we give it one. Just not mine. Cassidy's plan sounded good in theory. Mess with the monitoring system, feed it false readings, make it think she'd died when she hadn't. Simple electronic warfare, the kind of thing hackers back on Earth did for fun. Except this technology was thousands of years old, built by beings who understood energy in ways humans were just beginning to grasp. And Cassidy was working with makeshift tools and guesswork. By the 15th day, she'd made almost no progress. The system was too sophisticated, too alien. Every time she thought she understood one part, 3 more layers revealed themselves underneath. It was like trying to hack a computer when you barely understood what electricity was. Worse, she was getting weaker. The food Thornwing had saved was running out. The water kept her alive, but barely. She'd lost weight she didn't have to lose. Her hands shook when she worked. Her vision blurred at the edges. Thornwing watched her with growing concern. You need to rest. Can't rest. Have to figure this out. Cassidy's words slurred together. She was studying another energy node, trying to understand its pulse pattern. The symbols swam in front of her eyes. Cassidy. Just give me another hour. I'm close to something, I can feel it. She wasn't close to anything except collapse. She knew it. He knew it. But admitting it meant admitting defeat, and humans didn't do that. Couldn't do that. It wasn't in their nature. On the 18th day, Cassidy fainted while examining the main containment node. She woke up with her head in Thornwing's massive claw, carefully positioned so she wouldn't hurt herself. He'd carried her to the springs, given her water, and was now watching her with those ancient golden eyes filled with something that looked like grief. I cannot watch another one die, he said quietly. Not you. Not someone who fought so hard. Cassidy tried to sit up. Failed. Her body wasn't listening anymore. 3 weeks of starvation was catching up. Not dead yet. You will be. Soon. The monitoring system shows your vital signs failing. Then we run out of time. She managed to prop herself up on one elbow. Tell me there's another option. Anything. Thornwing was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his mental voice was heavy with reluctance. There is one possibility. Dragons have the ability to share life force with other beings. It is forbidden among my kind except in the most desperate circumstances. Why forbidden? Because it creates a permanent bond. Your life would be tied to mine. You would carry a piece of dragon within you forever. You would feel what I feel, know what I know. There is no severing such a connection once made. Cassidy actually laughed, which turned into a cough. You're worried about consent? Thornwing, I'm dying in a cave because the Galactic Council needs my death to power your prison. I'm way past worrying about permanent connections. Do it. You do not understand what you are agreeing to. Probably not. But I understand that I want to live, and I want to help you get out of here, and I can't do either of those things if I'm dead. She met his eyes directly. Besides, you've been alone for 300 years. Maybe having someone permanently in your head won't be the worst thing. Thornwing lowered his massive head until it was level with hers. You are either very brave or very foolish. Most humans are both. It's our whole thing. The process was nothing like Cassidy expected. Thornwing placed one claw gently against her chest, and suddenly energy poured into her like liquid fire. It burned through her veins, lit up her nervous system, made every cell in her body scream. But it wasn't pain exactly. It was intensity. Life itself, concentrated and overwhelming. She gasped, arching back, and felt something flow the other direction. Her humanity, her memories, her stubborn human determination flooding into the dragon. For a moment they weren't two separate beings. They were one consciousness experiencing existence from 2 different perspectives. Cassidy felt the weight of centuries. The loneliness of being the last of your kind. The slow erosion of hope over endless years of captivity. The guilt of watching 317 beings die while powerless to save them. Thornwing felt 20 years of human life. The joy of growing up on a colony world. The love of family. The burning curiosity that drove humans to take apart anything they didn't understand. The absolute refusal to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. When they separated, both of them were shaking. Cassidy looked at her hands and saw faint golden lines tracing her veins, glowing softly under her skin. She felt strong again. More than strong. She felt like she could run for miles, like she could think in multiple dimensions, like she downloaded an encyclopedia directly into her brain. "Whoa," she whispered. "Indeed," Thornwing said, and she could feel his emotions now, hovering at the edge of her consciousness. Relief. Hope. And something warm that might have been affection. Then the cave started screaming. Not literally, but the energy nodes all around them began pulsing frantically. Alarms that hadn't sounded in centuries suddenly blazed to life. The containment field flickered, stabilized, flickered again. Cassidy stood up, steady for the first time in days, and understood what was happening. The system's freaking out. It's designed to contain one consciousness. One dragon. It doesn't know what to do with two linked beings. Through their bond, she felt Thornwing's sudden realization matching her own. They weren't just connected emotionally. They were connected to the prison's energy network. Both of them. The system was trying to monitor two life forces that were somehow the same and different simultaneously. It was a paradox the ancient technology couldn't process. "We can use this," Cassidy said, her mind racing faster than ever before, human creativity mixing with draconic knowledge. "We're not trapped by the system anymore. We're part of it." Far above them, in orbit around Draconesh, Council sensors detected the massive energy fluctuation. Emergency protocols activated. Within minutes, a fleet of Valorix enforcers received their orders. The containment breach had to be stopped. If that meant burying the cave with the dragon and human inside, so be it. The Council had maintained order for millennia. They wouldn't let one glitch threaten that. The enforcers began their descent to the planet's surface, carrying weapons designed to collapse mountains. They had no idea what they were really flying into. The alarms echoing through the cave suddenly cut off. That was somehow worse than the noise. Cassidy stood in the silence, feeling the energy network through her new connection to Thornwing, and knew exactly what that silence meant. Someone was coming. They detected the fluctuation, Thornwing said, his mental voice tight with tension. "The Council will send in forces." "How long do we have?" "Minutes. Perhaps an hour if we are fortunate." Cassidy's mind raced, thinking in two directions at once now. Her human half was panicking, looking for escape routes that didn't exist. Her dragon half, the part of Thornwing she carried, was calm and calculating, drawing on centuries of knowledge. The combination was disorienting and powerful. "We can't run," she said. "The entrance is sealed, and even if it wasn't, they'd just shoot us down. So we fight." "Against a Council fleet?" "Cassidy, even at full strength, I could not. Not with teeth and claws. With this." She pressed her hand against the nearest energy node. Through their bond, she could feel the entire prison system like a vast circuit board. "We're part of the network now. Both of us. We don't break out. We take control." Thornwing's doubt flickered through their connection, but underneath it was something else. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. "I do not know if that is possible. Only one way to find out." They had maybe 40 minutes before the first enforcer ships arrived. Cassidy spent 30 of those minutes doing something that would have seemed impossible 3 weeks ago. She walked through the cave with Thornwing, touching each energy node, feeling how they connected. The dragon shared his understanding of ancient energy manipulation. She contributed human logic, pattern recognition, and a computer science class she'd barely passed back on New Terra. Together, they rewrote the prison. Not all of it, they didn't have time for that. But enough. Instead of a cage designed to hold one dragon, they transformed it into a fortress designed to protect two bonded beings. The containment field that had kept Thornwing trapped for centuries flipped. Now it would keep intruders out. When the Valorix ships appeared in Draconesh's red sky, Cassidy and Thornwing were ready. They stood at the cave entrance together, watching 6 crystalline enforcers descend with weapons that hummed with destructive power. The lead enforcer's voice rang out, cold and emotionless. "The human tribute has survived beyond acceptable parameters. The dragon has bonded with a lesser species. Both actions violate Council protocols. You will be terminated. The mountain will be collapsed." Cassidy stepped forward. The golden lines under her skin glowed brighter. "You locked me in a cave to die. You imprisoned him for existing. And now you're mad because we found a loophole in your system." She smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "That's a very human thing to do, by the way. Finding loopholes. We're excellent at it." "You are in violation." "Yeah, I heard you the first time. Here's the thing, though." Cassidy raised her hand, and the cave entrance behind her blazed with energy. "This isn't your prison anymore. It's ours. And you're not welcome." The Valorix opened fire. Seismic charges designed to shatter mountains launched toward the cave. Thornwing moved to shield Cassidy with his wings, an instinct he couldn't fight. But she was already moving too, her hands tracing patterns in the air that her human brain remembered from studying the nodes and her dragon knowledge understood how to activate. The containment field exploded outward in a dome of pure energy. The seismic charges hit it and simply stopped, suspended in the air like insects in amber. The Valorix fired again. Same result. Their weapons were powerful, but they were designed to destroy physical matter. The field Cassidy and Thornwing had created wasn't quite physical. It existed in the space between energy and reality, shaped by their combined will. "Impossible," one of the Valorix said, and for the first time, their emotionless voice carried a hint of confusion. "You keep using that word," Cassidy said. "I don't think it means what you think it means." She pushed. Not with her hands, with her mind and the connection she shared with Thornwing. The suspended weapons reversed direction, flying back toward the ships. The Valorix scattered, their crystalline forms moving fast, but not fast enough. 2 ships went down, crashing into the volcanic rock. Thornwing stepped forward, and Cassidy felt his ancient rage through their bond. 300 years of imprisonment. 317 deaths he'd been forced to witness. All the other dragons the council had murdered. It all came pouring out in a roar that shook the mountain. But it wasn't just rage. Through their connection, Cassidy tempered it with something else. Purpose. Control. They weren't here to destroy everything. They were here to prove a point. The remaining Valorix tried to regroup, calling for reinforcements, but Cassidy was faster. She'd spent 3 weeks studying how this prison's communication systems worked. Now she turned those systems outward. Every enforcer channel, every council frequency, every public broadcast network in range suddenly carried the same signal. Video. Audio. 3 weeks of recorded memories from Thornwing's centuries of captivity. Images of tributes dying in the cave while a dragon watched helplessly. Proof of the council's systematic genocide of an entire species. Documentation of exactly how the prison worked and why. "You wanted a death to power your system," Cassidy broadcast, her voice carrying across multiple worlds. "Here's 317 of them. Here's your greater purpose. Here's what the Galactic Council does to maintain its power. Everyone watching needs to know what you really are." The lead Valorix took a step back. For a being made of crystal, they suddenly looked uncertain. "You have committed treason against the Galactic Order." "No," Thornwing said, his voice resonating through every transmission channel. "We have committed freedom. There is a difference." The remaining enforcers retreated. They could have kept fighting, but suddenly the whole galaxy was watching. Sensors on 1,000 worlds were recording everything. The Council's secret was out. As the ships fled into Draconesh's red sky, Cassidy sank to her knees, exhausted. Thornwing lowered his head next to hers, and through their bond, she felt his gratitude and wonder. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," he corrected. "A human found the way. We found it together." She leaned against his scaled hide. "Now comes the hard part." "What is harder than this?" Cassidy laughed tiredly. "Explaining to the galaxy what happens next." The broadcast spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every civilized world in the galaxy had seen the footage. 317 deaths, centuries of imprisonment, systematic genocide dressed up as tradition. The Council had kept these secrets for millennia, but humans had a saying about secrets. They never stayed buried forever. Cassidy spent the first day after the battle just trying to process what they'd done. She sat at the cave entrance, watching Draconesh's twin sun set over the volcanic landscape, feeling Thornwing's presence at the edge of her mind. The bond between them was getting easier to manage. She was learning to separate her thoughts from his, to tell where she ended and he began. "They are coming," Thornwing said suddenly. "Many ships. Not enforcers this time." Cassidy stood up, her hand instinctively going to the energy node she could now control. "Hostile?" "I do not believe so. The signatures are mixed. Different species. This is unusual." The ships that landed over the next few hours were a strange collection. Some were human vessels from the colonies, including one from New Terra that made Cassidy's heart leap. Others belonged to species she'd never even heard of. Small delegations, mostly. Representatives who'd come without council permission. The first person off the New Terra ship was her father. He ran toward her, and Cassidy met him halfway, and for a solid minute they just held each other while he cried into her shoulder. Her mother was right behind him, and then Tyler, who'd grown an inch even in the few weeks she'd been gone. "We thought you were dead," her mom kept saying. "They told us the dragon always kills the tributes. We thought we'd lost you." "Almost did," Cassidy admitted. She gestured toward Thornwing, who had politely moved back to give them space. "He saved me. We saved each other." Tyler stared up at the massive dragon with the kind of awe only a 12-year-old could manage. "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen." Over the next few days, more delegations arrived. They came from worlds Cassidy had never heard of, species the Council had labeled as minor or developing. Turns out a lot of civilizations had their own stories about the Council's cruelty. Tributes weren't unique to Draconesh. The Council had a dozen different systems for keeping smaller species in line. Fear, manipulation, impossible demands. The galaxy ran on oppression, and everyone had just accepted it as normal. Until now. A Valorian administrator, her blue skin marked with scars from some past punishment, stood before the cave and addressed the growing crowd. "My world pays 90% of our resources in council taxes. When we asked to negotiate, they destroyed one of our cities as a warning. We have been silent for 2 centuries because silence meant survival." A karate trader spoke next, his voice translator crackling. "The council controls all trade routes. They decide which species prosper and which starve. We have been strangled slowly for speaking against them." Story after story. World after world. The galaxy was full of species that had been waiting for someone to take the first swing at the council's authority. They just never expected that someone would be a 20-year-old human and the last dragon. The council, of course, responded. They sent official statements condemning Cassidy and Thornwing as criminals. They demanded both be turned over for justice. They threatened sanctions against any world that supported them. They activated defense fleets and moved ships into strategic positions. But something had shifted. The Council's authority had always been based on the assumption that they were too powerful to challenge. That their rule was inevitable. Natural. The way things had to be. Cassidy and Thornwing had broken that assumption. If one human and one dragon could rewrite a prison that had held for millennia, what else might be possible? Humanity's colonies responded first. They'd always been ignored by the Council, treated as primitives barely worth noticing. Now they rallied behind Cassidy like she was some kind of revolutionary hero. She wasn't comfortable with that. She was just an agriculture student who'd refused to die quietly. But humans understood symbolism, and right now the galaxy needed symbols. The other species followed more cautiously. Breaking from the Council meant risking everything. But staying meant accepting oppression forever. The choice wasn't easy, but more and more delegates chose to stay on Draconesh. They called it the Free Gathering. A meeting of worlds that wanted something different. Cassidy found herself in the weird position of being a leader when she'd never led anything more complicated than a study group. But she had something the others didn't. She had Thornwing's knowledge, centuries of understanding how galactic politics actually worked. And she had a very human perspective on what to do about it. "We can't fight them head-on," she explained to the assembled delegates. "The Council has more ships, more weapons, more resources. If this turns into a war, we lose." "Then what do you propose?" the Valorian administrator asked. Cassidy grinned. "We do what humans do best. We make them irrelevant." The plan came together over weeks. It wasn't about defeating the Council. It was about building something better alongside them. The Free Gathering became the Free Worlds Coalition. They established their own trade routes, sharing resources without the Council's 90% tax. They created communication networks the Council couldn't monitor. They started sharing technology, something the Council had always restricted to maintain their advantage. Thornwing became the coalition's symbol, proof that the Council had lied about so much. But he insisted Cassidy be the voice. "Humans are better at talking," he said through their bond. "Dragons are better at looking impressive in the background." She laughed. "That's definitely a skill." Not every species joined them. Many were too afraid or too comfortable with the existing system. The Council still controlled most of the galaxy. But the coalition grew anyway, slowly, one world at a time. Cassidy's family stayed on Draconesh for a month before returning to New Terra. Her father pulled her aside before they left. "You know you can come home, right? You don't have to do this." "I know," Cassidy said. "But someone has to. And I think maybe I'm actually good at it." "Weird, right?" "Not weird. Just unexpected." He hugged her tight. Your mother and I are proud of you. Terrified, but proud. After they left, Cassidy and Thornwing stood at the cave entrance, watching ships come and go. The cave had gone from a prison to the Coalition's unofficial headquarters. From a place of death to a place of hope. What do you think happens now? Cassidy asked. Through their bond, she felt Thornwing's contentment. I think we continue. The galaxy is large. There are many species still suffering under the Council's rule. Perhaps we can help them find their own way to freedom. So we just travel around, breaking chains and causing trouble. Is that not what humans do best? Cassidy smiled. You know what? It really is. They left Draconesh a week later, the cave's defenses set to protect any who sought sanctuary there. They traveled to worlds still under Council control, sharing the truth, helping species find their courage. The human and the dragon, bonded and free, proof that the impossible was just another problem waiting to be solved. The Council called them terrorists. The Coalition called them heroes. Cassidy just thought of them as stubborn. But sometimes, stubbornness was exactly what the galaxy needed.